Hello and welcome to Vibrations. This is your host, Scott Cluthy, asking you to join me for a visit with Paul Solomon, whose spiritual awakening came 9 years ago when a mystical experience caused an altered state of consciousness to open a channel of communication for Paul. Since that time, he's helped thousands of people with his personal readings and health guidance, and teaches many others how to reach their own communication with their higher self. Paul Solomon on Vibrations. I'm wondering, what was your experience of that consciousness awakening in you? What was that?
Well, initially it was like a dream. When I went under hypnosis, if it could be called that, I think that it wasn't really. I was in a kind of a desperate situation, not wanting to be conscious, and I think that's the key to the whole thing. I was desperate enough in my state of consciousness to want to escape being consciously aware. And the attempt at hypnosis was an excuse just to escape reality, sensory reality, and get into another dimension. And getting into it was like a dream. When I woke up afterwards, I remembered a dream of going through a tunnel and into a temple at the top of a hill. And there was nothing spectacular about it, but the life-changing part of the experience was like blowing open the limitations of consciousness, finding out that I was not what I thought I was. Certainly the depression was gone after discovering this other part of myself, and I immediately went to work on trying to form a conscious link between that other consciousness and my conscious mind. And in fact we used the experience itself, the hypnosis, for getting instruction for doing that. And set up an experience of using meditation to reach that other state of consciousness instead of using hypnosis for it. And that way it can be tapped consciously, and you can get answers that supplement the left brain thinking. In fact, from a psychological point of view, the researchers say that what happened to me is that I made a switch from left brain thinking to right brain thinking, or perhaps from thinking with the cerebral cortex to going down toward the brainstem, deeper in the brain to the intuitive part of the mind.
And this is obviously what you like to share with people to get them in touch with the same source in your workshops.
That's part of it. There's a lot more to it than that. I am concerned that people be able to use their whole mind. I think that we're actually trained in this culture to use a tiny portion of our thinking ability. It's extremely limiting, and it keeps us from being creative and using the intuitive mind. I think if we can discover this other kind of thinking, we give birth to inventors, musicians, artists, people who are making new discoveries. But it's more than that. What we find out when we begin to discover we're not limited is that we're not victims. Almost everybody lives as a victim of the conditions around them. If I'm happy, it's because you're being nice to me. And if I'm angry or sad or unhappy, that's your fault too. And it's a whole problem with thinking and beliefs in our culture. It just isn't true. If I'm angry, it's because I decided to be. And we can make other decisions. I know there are a lot of people talking about that right now, but there are very few people who are giving specific techniques for changing the belief structure that will allow us to be happy, to be joyous all the time, just because we want to, by making different decisions.
For the listeners out there and the viewers, what exactly would be some of the techniques? What kind of things do you do to get people in touch with how, I guess what you're really talking about is how people set up their circumstances.
Yes, it is. Well, the first thing that we'll do in the workshop is introduce people to the ability to turn off the conscious mind, to set the left brain rational, logical thinking aside, and awaken the right brain intuitive, imaginative thinking. Learning to think by listening instead of thinking by a logical sequence of one thought leading into another. And that's done partly by a relaxation meditation process and by using visualization, awakening the subtler senses. That's a kind of first step. And then we'll move from that into discovering how belief structures are built. And in fact, I think the most revealing thing is to discover what our beliefs are. Most of us have beliefs that we haven't examined, and just getting a look at our beliefs, we realize how irrational they are. We've grown up in an irrational culture that has taught us to do things that don't work in our own best interest. When I find out that emotions are not just something that happen to me, they're something that I do. When I find out that I'm doing them, and I'm doing them on purpose, and I'm doing them because I have a belief about this emotion being appropriate to this situation, and I'm looking for a result. When I see that sequence, I can restructure that sequence. And what we're trying to do is not to turn off or suppress an emotion, but instead to change the belief that gave rise to the emotion. And when I believe something different about the catalyst, the situation that produced the emotion, then I will produce a different emotion, and one that works for me, and one that I have chosen as appropriate to that kind of situation.
You know, it's true, a lot of people read books or try to work on positive thinking, motivation, and so on, but isn't it true, Paul, that so often they don't really get to the actual belief that's actually triggering? They cover it up with other beliefs, their mind builds in other reasons.
Right, that's the trigger. You can't change your emotions through behavior modification. You have to change it through belief modification, which is a whole different thing. For example, if you call me a name, you use some kind of epithet that I think threatens my masculinity, then I have a belief structure that says if I have pride, I'm supposed to stick up for myself, prove my masculinity by giving you back the same kind of energy that you were giving to me. And if you examine that whole process, it doesn't work. First of all, it doesn't prove anything, certainly doesn't prove masculinity. It's not a satisfying feeling for me. It hurts my own body. It's not a pleasant experience. It didn't work. Now, if I look at that and structure my belief in a different way and realize, first of all, you wouldn't hurl such an epithet at me if you didn't believe that I'm a threat. In the beginning, that's a compliment. And if I begin to realize that and see what you're saying to me, I'm feeling inadequate and I must reduce you to my level to feel as adequate as you. And if I do, in fact, get the response that I'm looking for, I've successfully done that. When I change to that kind of an observation, then I realize that a different kind of response from me is appropriate in that situation. If I really do want to prove my masculinity, perhaps what I want to prove is I'll take control of me and not give you control of me by allowing you to change my body chemistry by using a silly little phrase or a set of words. When I change my belief about that threat, then it has no power to produce a chemical change in my body, and it doesn't make me angry. Then I can respond in the way that I consider most appropriate.
My guest today is Paul Solomon. He's in town to do a 3-day seminar. The bottom line, I guess, is it's known as the possible human. I guess the personal human as well, getting in touch with belief systems, how we trigger our reactions to things around us, and a lot of other aspects as well. The number here is 526-4000 at KPFT, and we'd love to have you call in with your questions and comments. So we have open lines if you'd like to call in. 526-4000 for Vibrations with Paul Solomon today. Let's look a little at some of the other aspects that you work on. Reincarnation. What are your feelings about that as far as ingrained programming from previous lifetimes?
Well, first, I have mixed feelings about reincarnation. I think that the people who are really into the study and fascinated with reincarnation have more of a tendency to entertain themselves with fantasy than to really discover anything that is meaningful or productive. So we don't get into reincarnation at all in the workshops. It's not a concept that I disregard. I think it can be important, and I think, in fact, many of the experiences that we have, both emotional, mental, physical, structural, and so on, can be explained by karma. But I think, on the other hand, that it's not important to get into beliefs about this or that. It's not important whether reincarnation is a fact. If it is a fact, we'll all come back anyway. So it isn't important to make that a basis of doctrine or dogma. I consider it something important to consider the possibility that what I am now, the way that I've structured my present personality, is influenced by experiences of the past. And in some ways, it can be a productive study, I think.
I had a teacher, Paul, once, so we worked a lot with reincarnation and the concepts and so on. And I just thought I'd share this with you. One of the things that he said to me, speaking of people who say, well, I was Joan of Arc, you know, or
Yes.
I was Cleopatra or whoever, that for him, what that could mean much more likely was that they were on the earth at that time, and because those figureheads were so important, they were almost like the only human beings. Everyone else was sort of just part of the functioning organism that helped supply their needs and so on. But those people probably identified strongly with those archetype figures, those energies, and that consciousness was embedded in them in a subconscious way where they carried it through. Mm-hmm. So they identified with that figure, and that's why we have so many Joan of Arcs and Cleopatras running around on the earth today.
Yes, I've met a few dozen Virgin Marys. I think it's also likely that in this lifetime, this seems to me to be the root of almost every difficulty that mankind is experiencing, as I see it. If I have a poor self-image, not enough self-appreciation, self-love, self-worth, then I'm going to look at some figure of the past as who I would really like to be and fantasize that that's who I was, and try to gain my sense of importance for this lifetime through who I used to be. And it isn't just a matter of reincarnation. That's at the root of arguments in marriage. It's at the root of every battle that you have in a relationship. One of the things that we'll be working with in the workshops is relationships. Almost nobody believes in a panacea. It's said that there are no panaceas for anything, but I have an argument with that. I honestly believe that the panacea for emotional difficulties, communications difficulties, relationships difficulties, the enjoyment of life, is the discovery of my own personal value as a human being. When I discover my own worth, then I'm not threatened by you're not agreeing with that worth. If you don't think that I'm all right, that's all right with me if I know that I'm all right. It stops arguments, it stops fights, it stops fear, and it changes the way that we form relationships. If I'm already all right with me, I can accept you for what you are without making demands, and I can begin to experience unconditional love, and that's what it's all about. Unconditional love heals, it communicates, it forms relationships, it makes health for body, mind, and spirit, and it's really the basis for having a right relationship with God. If I don't feel good about myself, I'll form a relationship with a God that is condemning and guilt-producing, and even my religion will be a negative kind of experience.
526-4000, the phone number. Please call in with your questions and comments. My guest today, Paul Solomon, and we'd be happy to take your calls on the air. We have 5 open lines. We'd love to hear from you. I'd like to let you know, by the way, there will be an introductory lecture if you'd like to find out if the workshop is something you'd like to look at doing this weekend. That'll be Friday night at 7 o'clock. It'll be at the Holiday Inn at the Galleria, and you can call 665-1736 for more information. That's 665-1736, introductory lecture, Friday night. That's 3 hours long. I'm sure there'll be a lot of information for that available to you there. And again, that'll be at the Holiday Inn at the Galleria. 526-4000 is the phone number. And my guest today, Paul Solomon. I know that you feel, as well, most leaders working in the metaphysical community and people throughout the world feel that there's a great awakening taking place in the planet at one level or another, and this has to do with a New Age consciousness transition. Could you address that? What does that mean for you, New Age?
I think what it means for me is that we are living in a generation when more people are asking questions than ever before in all of history. Past generations have had a tendency to accept the word of authorities in medicine, education, religion, almost every field. There were authorities that sort of dictated the beliefs, the rules, the structure, and people went along with it. And it's no longer true. People are questioning their medical doctors now. Instead of just listening to what they say, they want to understand the disease and how it works. They want to try alternative forms of medicine, get involved in their own healing process. I think that's fantastic. They're doing the same thing with psychiatry. They're looking into psychiatric self-help, building their own belief structures and their own responses. It's happening in religion. People are not just accepting the ideas of the church, that it has to make sense and it has to work, and they're exploring it. When we begin to take that kind of personal responsibility and find out that we can structure our own reality, we begin to structure a different kind of world. There's an assumption that it's impossible to ever have peace on earth, just because it's the nature of human beings to be afraid and angry and competitive. But the fact is that there are ways to structure our belief systems and our relationships that don't support that kind of difficulty. It is just possible to experience peace on earth and harmony in the way that people live. And if we can change the belief structure of society from self-condemnation, instead of a society that punishes people for feeling all right about themselves, if we can encourage this from very early age right on up, we'll produce what the metaphysicians have called the Aquarian Age, a time of mutual support and peace and harmony. It's time, and it's possible.
Paul, could you give us some other examples of how society itself acts to, as you said, punish for feeling good about yourself?
Sure.
What are some of the ramifications?
Well, while a child is growing up, we teach the child that we're supposed to love others, but not ourselves. It's not nice to love yourself. It's egotistical. And having self-appreciation and self-worth will produce an obnoxious person and this sort of thing. And so we grow up trying to compliment or appreciate other people and feeling ashamed of our own needs for appreciation or worth. And feeling condemned for doing that, we produce neurotic individuals who are constantly trying to get their all-rightness from others. A fact that's only been discovered in the last few years is that all-rightness or love is actually a survival need, meaning that a baby will actually die in the cradle getting food, light, water, all of the other survival needs. If that baby is deprived personal attention, he'll die from the lack of it. And so will adults. But what we've learned in this culture is to accept substitutes instead of that appreciation and love, because it's so hard to get from other people. And when we're trying to get that from somebody else, instead of giving it to ourselves, we find ourselves settling for sympathy, for anger, for negative forms of attention, instead of a supportive kind of attention. And here are all these people, 99% of the people of the world, competing for one another's attention and thinking, my all-rightness will come from your appreciation of me. If we get to a very basic discovery that the only all-rightness that I can ever really experience and find satisfying is my own all-rightness, that's my decision. If I know that I'm all right, then I can live with you, work with you, even if you don't love me. In fact, I realize if you don't love and appreciate me, that's something wrong with you. It isn't something wrong with me. You've got a need and you're withholding what you could give me and what we could be sharing. That doesn't mean that I have to withhold mine. If you don't love me, I can love you anyway. And that's to my advantage as well as yours, because it puts me in a situation that is supportive, it is confident, it is secure, and it doesn't become selfish or egotistical. I am all right, and I am secure. I'm not better than you. And security of that kind allows me to experience unconditional love. It allows me to hear what you're saying and not be threatened if you disagree with me.
I guess that relates absolutely to your work on relationships. So often we carry those patterns from one relationship to another, never finding one that works, when in fact they could all work to some degree.
That's right.
And a lot of marriages go down the tubes because of that.
Every relationship that we have is based on and is a direct result of our relationship with ourself. If that one is not all right, none of the others can be all right. No matter how they're structured, they can't be all right. And that's even true of our relationship with God. If I'm not all right with me, I'm not going to be all right with the God that I worship either. I will dictate those circumstances in which I feel condemned and guilty and sinful and so on. There are whole religions based on that concept now, and they're all based on this lack of self-worth and self-condemnation. And it's where anger and war comes from. You know, our whole criminal structure, our whole prison system is based on this absurd idea. Nobody ever commits a crime when they're feeling all right about themselves. It's impossible. It just doesn't happen. People who feel loved and feel all right, feel good, feel self-worth, don't steal things. They don't hurt people. So here we have someone who has committed a crime. Obviously, it is a person who doesn't feel loved and supported. So what does society do? Condemn that person, make them feel less loved and less supported, and we guarantee that we perpetuate the system. We actually cause crime by our response to crime. It's absolutely backward. If instead of this we had a prison system that is actually a school in self-worth, self-love, self-appreciation, teaching people to find their own all-rightness, their own support inside themselves, they'll not be lashing out at society, kicking people in the shins, and trying to get attention.
526-4000, the phone number here at KPFT. I'm sorry if someone's not answering the phone. We'll take your call in the air. It's the way it is at public radio. We're dependent on you and the volunteers to make it happen. So we're looking for some phone calls and interaction today. My guest, Paul Solomon. He's the founder of the Fellowship of the Inner Light, and we'll be talking about that in a few minutes to let you know more about that. 526-4000, I have 5 open lines. I'd love to hear from you. So give us a call, would you? Interact on public radio today. Paul, talking again about your initial experience in consciousness, and speaking of that, I think we have a phone call, so I'm going to try that before we lose them. And I think somebody's going to have to put them on hold before we can get them. Hello? Hi. Well, we'll have to wait and see. Well, maybe they're on hold. Hi, did you wish to be on KPFT? Interesting sound, but I don't think it's a... Sounds more like one of Ma Bell's mechanical monsters chewing up the phone lines. 526-4000 here at KPFT, and call back if we screw that up. Ah, okay. Hi, did you wish to be on KPFT?
Yes, I'd like to discuss something with your guest.
Go ahead.
Okay, he was talking earlier about new beliefs, forming new beliefs, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now these new beliefs, how can you form a new belief when it's always going to be based on your past? You cannot escape your past.
Mm-hmm. You can form new beliefs by making new observations. Most of the beliefs that we live with, the beliefs that make up our personality and our habits and interreactions, are beliefs that we formed when we were 3 and 4 years old. And they're formed by the reactions of people around us. Now we can form new beliefs based on the same situations through our observation of the present. Through looking at a situation more rationally, a new belief is rather automatically formed.
Okay, but society, don't you think that always has an input on our beliefs?
Sure it does, but we're much more capable of forming a rational belief out of society's interaction with us now than we were at age 3.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly, thanks for calling in. You know, the idea is we can build a whole new personality now. We're much more capable of building a supportive personality than we were as children. The personalities that most of us are stuck with were literally foisted onto us by our parents and teachers and friends, people growing up around us. They made comments about us, descriptions, he's so cute, she's so shy, he's such a sickly little thing. And we gathered these beliefs and made them a self-image, and it's the way that we see ourselves. And we can change those now by looking in a different way, making different observations.
Okay, I think we have another phone call. Let's see if we do. Hi, did you wish to be on Vibrations today?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
My question was this: how is it possible in your philosophy to maintain a sexually monogamous relationship if you love everyone equally and you feel that kind of love? How do you find the wherewithal within yourself to draw the line at something like that?
Well, first of all, sex is not the only way of expressing love. There are many, many expressions of love that don't necessarily need a sexual outlet. And I think that you can form a healthy relationship with your own sexuality and appreciation for others based on other factors than just love and appreciation for another person. We form partnerships based on mutual needs and mutual support, but it doesn't necessarily exclude loving or appreciating others. I mean, you love your mother, your father, your sisters or brothers, but that doesn't lead to a sexual interaction. And it can be the same with friends and coworkers and so on.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
That's fine, thank you.
All right, thank you. Hi, did you wish to be on Vibrations today?
Yes, I'd like to say first that I appreciate Mr. Solomon's clarity, and I'd like to ask him to say something about inspiration and the release of creativity, and I'll hang up the phone.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, inspiration usually, well, it really depends on whether you're coming from a religious point of view or a creative point of view, but in either case, inspiration is receiving ideas and direction not through the left brain logical process. And maybe I should comment about that. I've mentioned left brain, right brain several times without clarifying it. The current belief, in fact, the researcher who set up this theory has just won a Nobel Prize for the theory, that the left brain is largely involved with rational, logical, deductive, conclusive reasoning, and takes its input from the 5 external senses. The right brain, on the other hand, is intuitive, imaginative, creative, and takes its information by listening, and perhaps listening to God, listening to a creative source, listening to a higher mind, or some kind of a source of inspiration that is really where creativity comes from. Creativity doesn't really come from making observations and drawing conclusions, so it's not a left brain process. And the fascinating thing that's happened in our culture is that we have literally taught our children in school that the only way to think is to make an observation and draw a comparison and draw a conclusion. And so we have rather deliberately turned off the inspiration and creativity process, the imaginative process that awakens creativity. And what we're doing with Inner Light Consciousness workshops is to reawaken this right brain, imaginative, intuitive source, so that we're receiving ideas, and they are not necessarily a result of reasoning. They can be creative, they can be brand new ideas, inspirational thought.
Very good. We have another caller. Hi, did you wish to be on Vibrations?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask, to go back to the part where it was being talked about, the hypnosis part. Is part of your workshop going to deal with teaching people how to go back to that state that you achieved when you had yourself revealed to you?
We're not going to use hypnosis. I don't think it's necessary and not really productive in a workshop setting. We will use meditation, and we will introduce people to the possibility of discovering the rest of their mind. We will not use the kind of situation that will produce the depth of trance that I was in, because again, it isn't necessary. You can experience the rest of your mind without being totally unconscious.
Well, there were 2 things I wondered. One is I was hypnotized several times, and always either the person was inept or I was not all that receptive, but I tended to be very depressed, and in fact, the very first time I burst into tears, and never did really know why. And then also I wondered, when you're conditioned by family and society to be very unworthy and insecure, and still cling to that as an adult, is it possible through your method to shed that?
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. If there's any one gift that I could give to everybody in the world, that's the one I'd give them. Because it's such an ordinary situation. You'd be surprised how many people are programmed in that way. Almost everyone has been programmed to feel bad about themselves, inadequate, insecure. We were told when we made mistakes, you're a bad boy, you're a bad girl, and we grow up with these incredible feelings of unworthiness, and they're the source of almost all of the difficulties that we experience in adult life. And the person who doesn't need to restructure that belief system is a very rare person indeed. And it's really what the workshop is all about. That's the cornerstone of the whole thing, and it certainly can be changed.
I'm not receptive to hypnosis. Would I be able to go into meditation more than on just a shallow basis?
Yes, I think you could. Your receptivity to hypnosis is not necessarily an indicator one way or the other of your ability to meditate. I think that everyone has a very natural capacity to meditate. But I also think that you may have been more receptive to hypnosis than you think you are. The fact that it produced this feeling of wanting to cry indicates that you have suppressed a lot of negative emotions, a lot of hurt. And when you began to relax under hypnosis, these stored feelings and emotions began to come to the surface, and you probably were experiencing just the very initial stages of a primal release, which might have been very good for you if you had gone ahead and gotten the whole thing out. It might be a good idea for you to find a therapist that works with this kind of therapy to relax and get all of these things out of your system and get beyond that need to cry and get into a fresh relationship with yourself and begin to rebuild self-worth.
Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Thank you for your phone call. Hi, did you wish to be on Vibrations with Paul Solomon?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
I've done quite a bit of reading, and I'm impressed by your ideas on right and left brain. I think it's a very valid point, but what I'd like to ask you about is, why is it that my left brain can decide that I need to start a program of meditation or self-hypnosis or self-improvement, and 3 days seems to be about my maximum limit? Somehow there's a force or inertia or something stops the process just when it starts to be productive. Is that a common symptom, or?
Yes, I think it is fairly common, and the reason I think we could draw a parallel with doing physical exercise. A lot of us can get really enthusiastic about getting into a physical exercise program, and we do it for 3 or 4 days. Our muscles get sore. It's a test of discipline. And it's like forcing our mind to do something that it's a little rebellious to do, because it requires discipline and requires order, and we're sort of imposing discipline on something that has been undisciplined, and it rebels. And what you need to do is work through that period and go at least 21 to 30 days. And after a 30-day period, you're likely to build what is called a positive addiction. You become addicted to the beautiful feeling that comes from the relaxation response, and then you get past that initial resistance, and probably will have a continuous beautiful experience by doing that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Certainly.
And thank you for your phone call today. Paul, let's talk a little about the Fellowship of the Inner Light and your founding of that. That involves a lot of people. You bring a lot of different people to the Fellowship and present them to the public, people like Kubler-Ross and so on. How did that get started?
Well, it really started sort of organically in Atlanta, Georgia, when I began to discover these ideas for myself and share them with other people. There was a natural nucleus of people that gathered around, and we were all curious to hear about other people sharing similar experiences. And so we began to do workshops and conferences and invite speakers from wherever all over the world who were interested in making discoveries and sharing this kind of thought. So the Fellowship of the Inner Light is really a fairly loosely organized group of people all over the world. We are in Australia, England, South Africa, the Middle East, throughout Europe and Scandinavia. And through our interaction, we're able to bring speakers from Europe to the United States and speakers from the United States to Europe to sort of cross-pollinate and share ideas and make discoveries and grow together. It's a kind of a mutual support organization.
Any particular functions going on that people might be interested in knowing about? Do you have a yearly gathering?
Yes, we do. This year it will be in August in Virginia Beach, Virginia, where our international headquarters are. And I think the thing to do is to write to the Fellowship of the Inner Light in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and get on the mailing list and receive the newsletter, because there are all sorts of activities both in the United States and out. We will be going next week to the Virgin Islands for a retreat. And this is really one of the sort of things that we do. We'll be going down there to play, to go scuba diving and snorkeling, and to spend time on the beach and in the national park there, discussing and sharing with one another, doing meditation, discovering Tai Chi and that sort of thing. And that's one of the kinds of activities that we sponsor and support.
Very good. My guest today on Vibrations is Paul Solomon. He's in town for a 3-day seminar happening this weekend. There is an introductory lecture. If you'd like to attend it, you can call 665-1736 to find out the financial details and what have you. It'll be happening at the Holiday Inn at the Galleria. It's from 7 until 10 o'clock, I believe, Friday evening. And I'm sure it'll be a lot of information for you, and it certainly is a way for you to take a look at the workshop and see if that's something you'd like to do Saturday and Sunday. The only prerequisite is a desire to change, as Paul says, and it sounds within the grasp of anybody. 526-4000 is the phone number, and while Paul's still with us, we'd love to have your phone calls and questions and comments today on Vibrations. 526-4000, your phone number and input into listener-sponsored radio for Houston, Texas, KPFT. Everything goes in double time to transition to the new age. What exactly do you mean by that?
I think that means that everything seems to have accelerated way beyond the previous experience of the world in terms of how fast change can come, because of communication, transportation, and also because of the way that we've trained our minds. We are learning faster, making discoveries faster than ever before. And the frustration of that, it's both a blessing and a curse, in that the frustration of that is that it's going faster than we can keep up with and producing stress in a lot of people. Almost every disease that we're aware of today is stress-related. But at the same time, the blessing of it is that we can make progress faster, discover and evolve as individuals faster than ever before in all of history. So it's a beautiful situation if we can learn to manage the stress.
Okay, I think we have some more phone calls. We'll see if we do. Hello, did you wish to be on Vibrations?
Yes. Last night I was reading in the book Think and Grow Rich, and I've read it a number of times, and it's talking about sexual transmutation.
Yes.
And I've read it a number of times, and I've never quite I kind of can see how he was saying that sex is probably the most powerful emotion, and that the very successful people were able to transmute this emotion and, put their energies elsewhere. Mm-hmm. What I'm interested in is some kind of a positive action step I can take on a physical level to get going in that direction. And it's just something that kind of loses me, and I don't seem to be getting there.
I think that's a very difficult question to answer on the radio. It would be much easier to work individually with you, and I'd be happy to give you some suggestions in that direction. Basically, the concept is this: sexual energy is creative energy. If that is expressed biologically or genitally, then you are losing a certain amount of that energy by simply turning loose of it, rather than retaining it and channeling that energy in different directions. This really is the origin of the religious ideas of celibacy, the idea that if a person retained their sexual energy totally, that it would be an energy for transmutation. In the yogic philosophies, the reference there is to Kundalini energy, the creative energy that moves up the spine and eventually touches the brain with a transforming ability. And I think that the most practical thing that you can do is use your sexuality responsibly. If you are having sexual relations, then at those times, choose the time so that you are not depleting yourself and feeling as if all of your energy is going into physical expression. But rhythmically retain that, be aware of the energy and feel it as passion which is invested in other specific directions than just sexual or entertainment or appetite expression of the energy.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your phone call. Hi, did you wish to be on Vibrations?
Yes, good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
I wanted to ask you, I've read some of your stuff on the returning avatars, shall we say, and I was wondering if you might give your opinions about what form the Christ consciousness may take. Do you think it'll be concentrated in the next few years into a personality or very few personalities, or do you think it'll be widespread?
Well, if we're talking about the second coming, I think the most important thing to say is that the important second coming of the Christ for any individual is when Christ comes in me. Meaning this, there is the part of me that is a result. I have made a body, a mind, a personality. All of those are results. But there is another part of me that is cause. And the cause part of me that made the body, the mind, the personality, that cause part is my link with God, or that's Christ in me. Now I can do my thinking with the result mind, or I can discover the cause mind and set that in motion as my means of thought and my approach. When I make that transition, what the fundamentalists call the new birth, being born again, shifting the source of my thought and inspiration from beliefs and habits and results into causes and attunement with my source, then the Christ has come. The second coming has already happened for me as an individual. Now, in world terms, I think there's a little more to it than that. I think that when we reach the kind of level that a significant number of people in the world are thinking with Christ consciousness, then Christ has returned for the planet, and not necessarily as an individual, as a specific entity in a particular place. But I'm not ruling out the possibility that he will appear as an individual in a body and make a great contribution to the transition of the planet into a new age. I think that's possible too. And I don't want to limit the prospect to one or another of those, because I think all three of those steps are vitally important in terms of the second coming of the Christ.
Mm-hmm. They very much are. I had read in, I don't recall what work it was that you wrote, something about, in a biblical sense, a proclaimer along the lines of John the Baptist having come along and proclaimed that, we can source and be Christ, we can manifest Christ consciousness ourselves. And that was a very pleasant theory, I thought. But,
yes.
Well, thank you for coming down to Houston. You're most welcome here.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for your phone call. 526-4000 is the phone number. My guest, Paul Solomon. We have some open lines. We'd love to hear from you. Paul's doing a 3-day workshop this weekend in Houston and has an introductory lecture Friday night at the Holiday Inn at the Galleria. If you'd like to find out more about that, 665-1736 is the phone number. One of those things involved in the birth of a New Age consciousness and transition, of course, are the pains of that new birth and on Mother Earth. And I know you talked to that point. Could you give our listeners some feeling of that? There's a great deal about people. It looks really politically, Sadat being assassinated, Reagan almost assassinated, people like John Lennon being plucked off by someone, who's idealized, and them to a degree that becomes almost a reversal of their energy for this person to try and blow them away. It would appear to a lot of people there's a lot of random violence and insanity going on the planet, actually.
It certainly is. In fact, that's one of the peculiar things about this age. It's exciting to be here now because of the beauty of the transition, people asking questions and making changes. And at the same time, we have produced this situation in society where people not feeling good about themselves feel a necessity to strike out and destroy somebody else, as if bringing someone else down builds me up. And I think it's reached a very dangerous stage and a turning point. The question is, can we begin now to communicate enough self-worth and all-rightness to individuals all over the earth to help them discover, if I'm all right, if I'm happy, it's not because the world situation is all right. If I'm unhappy, it's not because of the economy. It is because of my relationship with myself and my decision. I can make a decision to be joyous and happy because I want to. I can take personal responsibility and enjoy life. It is still an exciting planet. It's a wonderful time to be alive, and we can have a ball. And it's all right to have a ball. That's another one of the beliefs of this society. If you're over 21, certainly if you're over 30, you're supposed to wear the look, which means mature, concerned, responsible, adult look, which translates worried. And everyone has the look. They're walking around with that prescribed look on their faces. And if they're happy, if they're smiling and having a ball, they're supposed to have an excuse. I mean, people actually ask you, what are you so happy about? And if you can't give them a good reason, they think you're crazy or you're on something where they want to know what you took.
I've experienced that before.
And it's a little bit insane to even think that way. The fact is, it is all right to be joyous, it's all right to be happy, it's all right to have a ball just because you want to, and it's not irresponsible to do so. We have to change that kind of thinking, or we're going to produce more of this kind of random violence. We are entering a period of transition in the earth. We've misused our resources, and we're continuing to misuse those resources in a dangerous way, destroying trees faster than they can replenish oxygen on the planet. We have literally changed the relationship between oxygen and carbon dioxide on this planet already. We've changed the relationship between the sun and the earth, the temperature of the earth. We're producing climate changes. We're producing actual changes in the weight balance of the earth, the weight of the polar ice caps, and so on. Very dangerously doing things to the physical planet that are contributing to what many people have called earth changes, earthquakes, weather changes, famine, and all sorts of things that are very destructive. And we can focus on the fear of that destruction, or we can focus on doing things about it and beginning to live in a new kind of way. After the destruction, however brief that may be and however terrible it may be, we'll be in a position to relate to the earth in a new way, having learned from the experience, and that may be simply some of the birth pains of the new age.
You just mentioned after that destruction, and you do have a sense that there is going to be some type of cataclysmic reaction, you might say, from the earth itself.
I don't think there's any question about it. It's already happening. We are experiencing weather changes now, and for the first time in all of history, we have acid rain, and acid rain is even predominant. Rain has always had an alkaline pH balance, and now acid rain is happening all over Canada, great parts of the United States, even in Australia. And most of the plants that we depend on for food can't grow in acid conditions. So there's no question that we are producing a famine, and we're just going headlong ahead with the production of it as if we were deliberate about it and really want that. There are ways to change it. One of the ways, of course, can I be political about this? One of the ways is to get rid of James Watts.
Okay. I don't think you're the only person on the planet who feels that way. Fortunately, I think for a lot of us.
No, Doonesbury is right there with me, and I appreciate him.
Gary Trudeau. Talking about other groups working with New Age concepts, there's been a great rise in the interest in astrology. There was a lot more of it in a public sense in the 60s where everyone had their chart done, but I think there's a lot more serious interaction taking place with professional astrologers and, of course, updating of information. Other groups, such as your own, which work toward positive reinforcement of people in a more positive light. And then, of course, there are many groups and smaller groups and what have you that are very, I'd call it very closed in their own way. What do you feel about the different groups and so on taking place on the planet, trying to move transitions of consciousness forward, and your own group? Obviously, no one group can work and be everywhere at the same time.
Well, it's I think it's all part of this great change in the consciousness of the planet. The groups are as much a result as a cause, but then it's a cyclic thing. They result from the excitement and the questions of the individuals, and then they sponsor those questions. And so through the awakening of all of these groups and movements, we are exploring things. Not all of them have what I would consider to be the answers or the truth. But even if they don't, they are stimulating the questions. And if we keep stimulating the questions, we're going to seek out the answers. So I have no problem with the various different groups with sometimes even the craziest of ideas are spawning new thought and new questions and a movement toward finding some new answers. I think that's vitally important.
I think we may have another phone call, so let's take it if we can. Hi, did you wish to be on Vibrations?
No, thank you, Scott.
All right. Shows you what I know. We have a phone call, but it wasn't for the radio show. My guest today has been Paul Solomon, and I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
It's a great pleasure. Again, the introductory lecture's Friday night. If you'd like to find out about it, call 665-1736. It'll be at the Holiday Inn at the Galleria. Paul has authored publications such as Earth Changes and the New Planet Earth and A Healing Consciousness. And his personal message, I guess, to anyone listening and to everyone else is, we are among a group of people rather exclusive in the annals of history because we've entered and are living on Earth during a period of transition from one age to another. A whole era is ending and there's a spiritual explosion into a new age. Mother Earth is pregnant and we are the parents. We need only to see the pains of labor as the effort to change and live in joyous expectancy of the new birth. And, well, any closing thoughts you might like to give to the audience?
I'd like to give encouragement to people to dare to enjoy yourself just because you want to.
Very good. That's the best reason I know. Well, thank you for being here, and we'll see you in the future.